You know, depending on which corner of the country you are in, often if you went down to the supermarket or you went down to the local tavern or bar and you asked somebody, hey, do you want to become the 51st state? Some people might take that as a threat. Others would welcome it. But many, vast majority, would tell you to F off in no uncertain terms is what we've been seeing in our country lately. This has been a very turbulent time. It's been a little wild. And, you know, since Trump has gotten in, it's been no shortage of entertaining. And this is what's really been frustrating, right? This whole new infused idea of patriotism we are seeing from the left and seeing from others who have been crapping on our country for so long, all of a sudden are wearing the red and white with pride, waving their Canadian flags out their doors and off their cars and all of this. And they say, no way will we ever, and I mean ever, become the 51st state. Donald Trump can suck an egg, Elizabeth May would say, or pound sand, as she would also would say. And this is the sentiment we are seeing in our media. We're seeing it in pop culture at the moment. And we're seeing it through the boos of the American national anthem on Canadian soil. So naturally, you heard from Mark Carney himself. He says, I will not be talking to Donald Trump. I don't plan to talk to Donald Trump until he respects our sovereignty. Until we can have that conversation, then I have no interest in having a conversation with him. And we're seeing it play out so much even through our different politicians here. Like, they need to respect our sovereignty. Our sovereignty is at risk. We need to fight. We hear from Jugmeat saying we need to fight against Donald Trump. He's threatening our sovereignty. He shouldn't be allowed in the country. Yada, 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 yada. We're hearing that all so much these days, aren't we? And it goes back to the point how Canadians just don't like America. They don't like the idea of being associated with America. It's a deep, deep insecurity we've had for many, 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 many years. We just don't want to be American. That is how people feel, and that's the sentiment. And so I was going through social media, an article came across my screen that I had, intrigued me a little bit. I tapped on the article, read into it a little bit. It was starting to spread a little around on social media, and it was from a publication out in Europe called Euractiv. And this is what they had to say. It says, Canada to be EU's 28th member? Nearly half of Canadians say yes. The European Commission isn't strictly ruling it out either. So much for Donald Trump's 51st state. Canada seems to be eyeing EU membership instead, with 46% of Canadians in favor, according to a new poll. While the US president repeatedly muses about making Canada the 51st state, Canadians are looking across the pond for new alliances. A new Abacus Data poll shows that almost every other Canadian would support joining the EU, with 29% against and 25% undecided. That's far more enthusiasm than Trump's secession plans for Canada, which only 10% of Canadians support. This poll was conducted before Trump made good on his plans to impose tariffs on the northern neighbor, which could push support for joining the US even lower. Support for EU membership among Canadians is even slightly higher than in the UK. A January poll showed 45% of Brits in favor of rejoining the EU, a gap that's within the margin of error. When asked by Euractiv about Canada's eligibility for EU membership, Commission spokesperson Paolo Pinho said, "We are honored with the results of such a poll. It shows attractiveness of the EU. It shows the appreciation of a very large of Canadian citizens for the EU for its values." Pinho did not directly rule out Canada's European prospects, but stressed that there are criteria foreseen in the treaties, indeed, which foresee that what is necessary for an application for an accession to take place. Interesting thoughts, interesting statements here. We go to the polls here. We go, should Canada join the EU? Done by Abacus Data for a sample pool of 1,500 people. And I already know, I've seen it. I've seen this comment a lot on different posts, different pieces of social media. It's like, 1,500 is just not a good data pool. And I'm like, actually, no, that's pretty standard for getting an accurate idea of what people are thinking. 1,500 is a really good number, as long as they polled from different demographics and different age groups, this, that, the other. It's a fairly good poll you can rely on at this point in time. And we see it here. 44%, depending on the degree of severity, but 44% agree with this. 34% are like, no, and then you have 23% are undecided. Then you come down here, support for becoming a member state of the European Union. It goes up to 46%, 29% who are opposing it, and then 25% who are like, meh, I don't know how I feel about that. The reason why this annoys me, and this frustrates me, and it should frustrate you, is because the very same people who are saying, screw America, will never be the 51st state. You hear it from Trudeau, you hear it from Carney, you hear it from Pierre Poilievre, you hear from Jugmeat Singh, you hear it from everybody. We'll never become the 51st state. And you probably heard it from your grandmommy as well. You overheard someone behind you at the grocery store. You hear it from somebody at the hockey rink. You hear it from everybody. We'll never become the 51st state. These same people are supporting and would support membership of the EU. Oh, Josh, that's not a big deal, though. It's just you're a member part of a group. You have an alliance. You have military support. Yeah, here's the thing, folks. Let's talk about it for a second, shall we? So EU has an executive branch. They have a legislative branch. They have members of European Parliament and members who are part of the EU. If they put in laws that conflict with laws in the EU, well, the EU laws take precedent. Interesting. So you have an overarching government entity whose laws take precedent over your country's laws, and they dare say that your country has sovereignty? Interesting. It almost seems like, I don't know, not much more of a difference than being a state. Actually, here it says support for becoming a member state of the European Union. My friends, the European Union, being a part of it, is really just a glorified state situation that we see in the US. And that's what really concerns me about the education levels in our country. We'll never become the 51st state, but hey, I'll be part of the member state of the EU. No problem there. Germany just holds 96 seats out of the 750 seats. Then it goes down to France's at 81, Italy's at 76, Spain at 61, Poland at 52, and so on and so forth. It just keeps decreasing as you go through all the member states. You will never have a say in the laws of your own country. If your country decides to make its own laws here in Canada, you will be subjected to the laws of the EU. You want to do something different? EU takes precedent. The EU wants a carbon tax, but you don't want a carbon tax? Well, guess what? You're getting a carbon tax. So you want to be the 51st state? Or do you want to be the 28th member state of the EU? That, my friends, is very concerning and really honestly ticks me off when I hear it, because it really shows and highlights the fact that this is nothing more than virtue signaling, which is what the left has always done best. Oh, I got my Canadian flag now. This is the cause of the day. Their patriotism is hollow. It doesn't really get me excited. It kind of concerns me in a lot of ways because it bends and morphs to the winds of change. There's no conviction there. There's no hard set of beliefs there. It's whatever the TV tells them that day, or in this case, what their phone tells them that day. You know, the jokes have been made. We're going to be seeing an election called here some point here in the next 7 to 10 days. Just last night, Mark Carney took off to Europe. He made sure to say here, which I thought was interesting. He had an excellent call with President von der Leyen, who is one of the 3 presidents of the EU. Had an excellent call with the president about the road ahead for Canada and EU trade. Canada and Europe are strong, reliable partners in a shifting global economy that matters more than ever. We're ready to secure new transatlantic business opportunities together. He's doing his job as the prime minister, trying to secure other avenues of trade in such a turbulent economic time. That Abacus poll should concern you. If there is appetite in our culture to become an EU member, we will outright forfeit our sovereignty. And you won't even realize it because the EU does such a great job of masking and putting a veneer that you have control over your country. There's a reason why the UK left. There's a reason why Brexit was a thing. You really will have no say. It's really no different. It's a government for your government. That's what it is. It's no different than what a province's relationship is with our federal government here, or would be no different if we were a state of another country. There's really not much of a difference. There's some nuances and changes here and there, but you're essentially handing over control of your country to another legislative body. And that, my friends, I have no interest in either. I like a sovereign Canada. I like that we make our own laws or make our own rules. And I, my friends, like to see Canada be a master of its own domain. When I see, the polls I've seen there and seeing Mark Carney's post here saying he left for Europe yesterday to have more conversations, to secure trade deals and secure allyship as he goes up against Trump and eventually we'll see an election, I'm reminded of videos like this. This was only posted like a couple months ago, or reminded of a couple months ago.
Yeah, it was a tell.
As a European, as a
European, I am a European, actually.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm Irish citizen. Yeah, so there you
welcome.
go.
Welcome.
Speaking as a European, I'd like to say the following.
Again, the man with 3 passports, the man who hasn't been in our country for the past 11 years, the man who says, I'm European, he's the one who's calling the shots in our country right now. He's the one that went over to Europe to start having conversations about trade. And he's the one who is very well connected with Europe. He's very connected with the WEF. He's very connected with the EU. He's very connected with a lot of players over there. I'm sure he wouldn't mind facilitating a member state to the EU, especially when the spokesperson for the EU says, we can explore the option, see what happens. And this is what you get with a liberal government, folks. This are the consequences for voting this party in. They will continue and utterly sell our country out. The very thing they accuse the conservatives of what they'll do. They have been doing it and will be doing it consistently, whether it be to the WEF, whether it be to China, or whether it be to the EU. They'll be selling it to everybody who isn't Canadian. And there is no other proof than this. We're seeing Hudson's Bay says it will liquidate entire business if no financing can be secured. One of Canada's largest and most storied companies could be closing its doors. Thank you to liberal policies and inaction. That's it for me. I'll see you this afternoon. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.